Hi, I'm Dr. Scott Conkright. What if your body is holding memories your mind can't access? Every child eventually develops the beginnings of thought, the flickering mental light that begins to shape raw experience into meaning. But what most people misunderstand is that these early thoughts are not abstract. They are body based and enveloped in feelings. They are explanatory. Thought arrives as a way to make sense of feeling. A small example: a toddler reaches for his parent. The parent is distracted, let's say. The toddler feels the drop. The chest tightens, something inside cools down. He does not have words for this. He does not yet have a concept of distraction or stress or adult preoccupation. He has a feeling, and then he builds an interpretation to stabilize it. The interpretation is never sophisticated. It is incredibly literal. I caused the drop. My reaching was the problem. Something about me made the warmth go away. This is the moment where feeling turns into a story. And that story usually centers the child as the cause. Not because he is selfish, but because he is powerless. Powerless creatures assume fault. It is the only way to feel even slightly in control, to have some little bit of agency. The interpretation solidifies into personality long before adulthood. And this is where genuine suffering begins. Not in the feeling, in the story the child used to survive. Think of Lisa. She knows her partner loves her. She understands this with her mind. She's intelligent, grounded, and psychologically aware. She's not fragile or foolish. Yet, whenever her partner goes quiet, her body reacts with the same automatic folding, the same dip in temperature she felt as a child when her parents drew inward, when they were overwhelmed by their own stress. She tells herself she is being irrational. She apologizes for her clinginess. She hides her panic because she believes she should be over this by now. But this reaction is not coming from her adult logic. It's coming from the child who once felt the drop with no explanation, no way to understand it. The chill Lisa feels today is not about her partner. It is a weather pattern left over from a climate she never chose. This is why self judgment never works, because you are not judging your present, you're judging your past. Lisa's system learned early that silence meant danger. Her body still believes the past is prologue. When Lisa finally sees this, something subtle shifts. She stops trying to correct the reaction and starts listening to it. She stops fighting her weather and begins to try to understand it. This is when healing begins. Not with mastery, with recognition. Shame is a complicated word, so let me clarify what I mean. Shame begins as a pause in the system, a moment when presence falters, when attunement breaks. It is a drop in vitality, not a moral indictment. It is the body saying, the weather changed, something happened. The problem is not the pause. The problem is when the pause becomes a story. If the parents respond with gentle repair, the child learns that the story is temporary. If the parents respond with impatience or irritation over long periods of time and frequently, the child learns that the pause means something about them. This is how shame goes from a fleeting signal to a worldview. When Maya was a child, whenever she did something that annoyed or inconvenienced her parents, like spilling her milk or juice. She felt the core feeling of shame the moment her father sighed. The pause was honest. It was a real time reaction to the loss of connection with her dad. But when he rolled his eyes and called her clumsy or stupid, everything shifted. The pause became a verdict. The signal became a sentence. The weather became the climate. When Maya grows up and makes a small mistake at work, her system doesn't think, oops. It says, I am the problem. The shame she feels as an adult is a ghost of the sigh at the dinner table. If you've ever felt a disproportionate collapse after a small mistake or small misstep, you are living inside one of these old weather systems. There's nothing wrong with you. You are reacting exactly the way you were built, the way our bodies are built to react. Let's bring in Daniel. Whenever his wife gets overwhelmed and withdraws, Daniel feels that old drop. He follows her down the hallway, flooded with urgency. She feels pressured and retreats even further. He escalates. She shuts down. Two nervous systems reenacting early Fourth Da. Two people are trying to regulate the weather inside them. Two stories colliding. Daniel's behavior could be understood as controlling or dramatic, perhaps intrusive and or insensitive. We don't know enough right now to judge. What we can guess is that he is chasing her because her distancing terrifies him. His body remembers a climate where return was not guaranteed. We can also make a guess that his wife is not pulling away because she does not care. She withdraws because her system learned early that her emotions were too much for others. Her drop leads to retreat. His leads to pursuit. Both patterns were adaptive in the climates they came from. Both patterns create conflict in the climate they are now in. What saved their marriage was not communication techniques or rules about fighting. It was the moment Daniel learned this pattern from his work in therapy. One day, during a conflict, he said, really simply, when you turn away, something collapses in me. I get scared. That's why I follow. And when she said in return, hey, listen, I'm not leaving. I'm trying to calm my body. I just need a small pause. Please don't interpret it as abandonment. The two weather systems speaking the truth. Two early forecasts being rewritten. There's another piece of the story we need to consider before moving into repair. When we grow up in climates that teach us to distrust our own weather, we often create adult lives that mirror that pattern. Some people chase it intensely because it feels like warmth. Some chase chaos because they mistake it for passion. Some become hyperachievers because productivity feels safer than vulnerability. Some scroll endlessly because stimulation is easier to bear than emptiness. Some people only feel close when they are fixing someone. Others only feel safe when nobody needs anything from them. These are not flaws necessarily, they are emotional ecosystems built in the absence of reliable return. The nervous system will cling to anything that feels predictable, even if it's harmful. One woman told me that she despised conflict but felt strangely alive during arguments. Her childhood taught her that conflict was the only time her parents paid attention. Calm felt like absence. Chaos felt like connection. I'm calling this counterfeit weather. It mimics warmth, but it exhausts the system. When adults feel hollow after a weekend that looks full, or restless after hours online, or numb after an argument, this is usually why. Counterfeit weather cannot regulate you, it can only distract you. And the cost of distraction is always the same. You lose contact with your actual weather. And without that weather, you cannot repair. Before we move into the last part of this episode, I'm leaving you with something simple. Your emotional life makes sense. Not just metaphorically, not philosophically, biologically, it makes sense. Even every panic, withdrawal, overreaction, numb spell, anytime you cling or freeze or flood and retreat, it has roots in a climate that once shaped your survival. You're not broken in that sense. You're patterned, and patterns can be softened, not by force or perfection, but by understanding and patience. In the final part of this episode, we will move into repair, coherence, and slow retraining of the early forecasts and what it means to live a life that finally matches your internal sky. Repair is not just technique. Repair is a return. People imagine that emotional repair happens through perfect communication, well timed apologies, or clever strategies that guarantee a good outcome. But none of that works unless your nervous system believes it is safe enough to reconnect. Repair begins in the exact same place that Fort Da began, in the recognition that something left has returned, not conceptually, affectively, at core feeling level. Your partner softens, your friend reaches out, you sit beside your child and stay quiet long enough for them to feel you again. You tell the truth about what hurt. Someone hears you without defending themselves. These moments matter because your body recognizes the repair before your mind names it. People heal when their weather shifts back towards warmth. The task is simple, but it's not easy. You must notice the moment of return. Most adults are so preoccupied with the rupture that they miss the repair entirely. They see a faint smile or partner leaning in or gentle tone as nothing special. But for the nervous system, these gestures are everything. They are the da of adulthood, the return. And they teach your system, your feeling system, and your nervous system that the drop is not the final word. Here is something that never gets said plainly enough. Your body is always making predictions. You grew up, if, if you grew up in a climate where parents returned quickly and warmly, your feeling system and nervous system predicts safety. If you grew up in a climate where repair was slow or inconsistent, your nervous system predicts danger. These predictions are not conscious. They show up as reactions: a knot in your stomach, a prickling behind your eyes, a sudden vigilance, a defiant shutting down, a desire to flee, a need to fix the situation before it unravels, or it's a quiet collapse of interest or joy. These are not moods, these are forecasts. And forecasts are updated only through new experience. That is why insight alone does nothing. You can understand your patterns perfectly and still watch your body react exactly as it always has. The feeling system learns through felt shifts, not ideas. A new tone, a new kind of silence, a new kind of repair, a partner who returns instead of withdrawing, a friend who listens instead of analyzing, a boss who clarifies instead of criticizing, a therapist who stays steady through your storm. You taking a breath before reacting instead of reenacting the old storyline. That's an important one. These are new pieces of data. They soften old forecasts. And over time, slowly and almost imperceptibly, the nervous system and the feeling system begin to trust what it could not trust before. Repair is the experience that rewrites prediction. This is the adult version of Fort Da. The story being practiced is no longer the spool returns, but my feeling changes and I stay in connection throughout the change. That is coherence. Not constant calm, not emotional perfection, whatever that is, just coherence. Love asks that you hold two weather systems at once, your own and someone else's. Most couples do not fight because they disagree, they fight because their weather systems collide. Your partner's pause triggers your freeze, for instance, and then your freeze triggers their anger. Their anger triggers your retreat. Your retreat triggers their fear. Two storms spiraling around each other, each believing the other is the source. But there is another way to see this. You can notice the moment when your partner's weather shifts. You can name the feeling without analyzing it. You can say, it looks like something inside you is dropping here. There's a drop. Instead of saying like, why are you being so overreactive? Or you can say, I felt something collapse in me when you went quiet. Instead of, you always shut down. That is what Daniel and his wife learned to do. Their fights did not disappear. Their disagreements didn't disappear. That'd be ridiculously impossible. But something beautiful did change. They learned to talk about the weather, not about the content. That's a big difference. Talk about the weather. It is incredible how quickly a relationship softens when people stop trying to defend themselves and begin naming what they feel. You don't need to be perfect to do this. You just need to be present. Because presence is the warm front that stabilizes every nervous system and every feeling system in the room. There's a form of adult suffering that hides behind every adult form of distraction. People chase intensity because it feels alive. They chase productivity because stillness feels dangerous. They chase stimulation because quiet feels like shame. They chase perfection because being flawed feels like exposure. They chase drama because the drop in connection is familiar, even comforting in its predictability. These are counterfeit climates. They mimic the feelings of return but provide no nourishment. This is why you feel wired and empty after a long night on your phone. This is why some people break up and immediately crave another conflict. This is why some achievements feel thrilling for 10 minutes only and then feel hollow. This is why people pleasing feels safe until it collapses into resentment. Counterfeit climates are emotional fast food. They fill you with activity but starve you of regulation. You may not notice this until your life becomes strangely exhausting. You may have warmth in your friendships, but feels strangely alone. You may have success at work, but feel brittle inside. You may have a loving partner and still brace for disappearance at the slightest shift. This is what happens when your life and your weather do not match. The return is missing, even when nothing is technically wrong. Real regulation happens slowly. It is quiet. It is often unremarkable. It feels like being able to breathe again without knowing why. You sit with someone and your body softens. A friend's voice steadies you. A partner holds your gaze without flinching. You tell the truth about your fear, and the world does not end. You pause before reacting and feel a tiny window of choice open inside you. These moments don't look like healing necessarily, they look like ordinary life, but they are the storm system recalibrating. They are the feeling system learning that not every drop ends in collapse. They are the return that the spool game once symbolized. You don't need a dramatic transformation. You need repeated, lived experiences of connection surviving the weather inside you. That is what repairs the system. That is what updates the forecast. That is what makes adulthood bearable. Let's go back one last time to the child in Freud's study. He throws the spool, he watches it vanish, his breath catches, there is the small collapse, and then he pulls it back. The spool returns, his body releases. This tiny ritual has been misunderstood for 100 years. It was never about mastery, it was never about separation, it was never about control. It was the child rehearsing the truth his feeling system needed most. The drop can end, warmth can return. Feeling bad is not permanent. Connection is not over completely. The world does not abandon him forever. This is the emotional blueprint every human being carries into adulthood. It shapes your longing, it shapes your fear, your reactions, your capacity for intimacy. It shapes your hunger for reassurance, your confusion and conflict, your collapse when someone turns away, your joy when someone returns. It shapes the story you tell about who you are and how love works. Freud saw a game, but the child was practicing hope. I want to leave you with one simple idea. Your emotional life is not a mystery. It is not chaos necessarily. At times, maybe, but most of the time, I hope not. It is not a flaw in your character. It's not something you should have outgrown. It is weather. It's ancient. It's honest. It's, it's predictable once you learn how to read it. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not broken, dramatic, or needy. You are responsive to the climate you grew up in, and you can slowly create a new one. There will always be drops. There will always be moments when the sky darkens and your chest tightens. But the return is built into you as well. It is the oldest part of the human story. When the drop comes, pause, breathe, stay with yourself, and wait. Because the warmth returns. It always does. And the more that you trust that, the more coherent your emotional life becomes. Thank you for listening to the Meaningful Happiness podcast today. We'll be back. I'll be back in another week. In the meantime, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. See you later.